Recently, a major event that has attracted much attention has occurred in the international technology community, namely the release of Huawei's Kirin 9000S chip. The incident sparked widespread debate as to whether China had breached the U.S. blockade on chips. However, at the same time, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce stated on September 3 that the United States will continue to sell semiconductor chips to China, but will not sell to China the most advanced chips for military purposes, especially artificial intelligence chips. So, what does Secretary of Commerce Raimondo's statement mean? In the chip war between China and the United States, has China won? Welcome to World Hotspot, where you will be able to learn about projects, cooperation around the world and important information about China. I hope you can subscribe to me. Let us discover more interesting things around the world together. Before the video starts, let us answer a question. Is Huawei's 9000S chip independently developed? Does its advent mean that China has broken through the US blockade on chips? The answer is simple, a breakthrough, indeed, but not complete victory. To explain this answer, we need to start with the chip itself. First of all, Kirin 9000S is a chip independently developed by Huawei in China. Modern chips usually consist of a CPU part responsible for calculations and a GPU part responsible for graphics rendering. Prior to this, Huawei used the public architecture of the American ARM company to design Kirin chips. However, Huawei cannot continue to use this architecture due to US sanctions. So how should Huawei solve this problem? China can develop its own chips, but Huawei chose its own Taishan core. In fact, this core is not created from scratch. Huawei has previously conducted research and development in the field of server clusters and developed a CPU architecture for servers. Unexpectedly, the United States suddenly imposed sanctions on Huawei, forcing Huawei to modify the CPU architecture on its servers and apply it directly to mobile phone chips, and even implemented hyper-threading technology on mobile phones. The chip has 8 cores and 12 threads, making it more powerful. Therefore, the Kirin 9000S chip is similar to that of Apple in the United States. They are both domestically designed CPUs independently designed and developed by Huawei. In terms of chip design, China can proudly claim that it will never be restricted by the United States again. So, the next key question is, which manufacturer made this chip? The standard answer is to use domestic manufacturing processes. Since there are only a few domestic manufacturers that can manufacture Huawei Kirin chips, it is likely that SMIC will complete the manufacturing. According to the test results of this chip in Geekbay, we found that this chip uses SMIC's domestic process, and its performance is roughly equivalent to about 7 nanometers. This is a very impressive achievement. Why do you say that? In the past, the expectation level of China's domestic CPUs was roughly 28 nanometers, which was equivalent to 5 to 8 years behind the most advanced processes in Europe and the United States. However, the emergence of the 7 nanometers process means that China only needs to catch up with the 5 nanometers, 4 nanometers, and 3 nanometers processes, and may only lag behind by 3 to 5 years. Huawei's Kirin chip has undergone multiple benchmark tests, and its performance is roughly equivalent to Apple's A13, and can even surpass the previous mainstream flagship Snapdragon 888 Plus. This performance can be said to be excellent. After all, this is a chip designed by Huawei itself and manufactured by SMIC using completely domestic processes. To be honest, it is exciting that China has achieved such an achievement, because all of China was previously worried about how China would respond if the United States completely cut off the supply of Chinese chips. Do we have to rely on low-level chips using the 28 nanometers process to support the development of China's economy and digital society? However, Huawei's self-developed architecture and SMIC's domestic process have shown the world that China is now capable of designing and manufacturing advanced 7-nanometer process technology chips, and these chips can be compatible with mainstream devices, such as mobile phones. In the future, this chip can also be used in tablets and even thin and light laptops. Additionally, there is potential for optimization and upgrades. CPU performance calculations conducted by British technology media show that Huawei's design capabilities are very strong in terms of chip design. If it is manufactured by TSMC, the performance can be comparable to Apple. In the past, China's Huawei may have had a design gap with Apple, but it has now caught up. Therefore, China can confidently say that it does have the final trump card. Even if the United States completely cuts off the authorization of chips, China can still rely on self-developed processes and architecture to maintain the good development of domestic society, and have enough time to develop more advanced chips and technologies. British media also believe that the launch of Huawei Kirin 9000S means that China has broken through the U.S. technology blockade and has made initial progress in the 5G chip field. It has also made some achievements in the domestic chip ecosystem. Once the first step is taken, subsequent development will usually be smoother. As long as you stay invested and try to avoid unexpected situations, it is not impossible for Kirin chips to return to the top. Of course, China's Huawei's success does not mean surpassing the United States. Objectively speaking, the overall score of 121.5 points is only about half of the Apple A16. Although Kirin 9000S can be regarded as a landmark chip, it can only be regarded as adequate today and is far behind the top level. In addition, Apple in the United States is about to release the latest A17 chip, and the gap will become wider and wider. So, can China be said to have surpassed the United States? It's not true. China's chip defense war cannot be completed in a few years. It may take more than 10 years or even decades, or even longer. However, this breakthrough has brought about some important changes. Previously, U.S. President Biden had considered announcing large-scale chip sanctions against China at the end of August, which would prohibit U.S. chip companies from selling products to China. This move triggered a joint lobbying trip to the White House by the three major U.S. chip giants, which can be said to be a very dangerous moment. At that time, these three American companies even threatened the U.S. government, saying that if they lost the Chinese market, the chip factories they were already building would have to stop operations because the United States itself had insufficient demand. However, now U.S. Commerce Secretary Raimondo has changed his tune. He said the most advanced chips cannot be sold to China, but other chips can. This can be considered an obvious concession. But this is not due to the generosity of the United States, but to China itself. It was during Raimondo's visit to China that the launch of Kirin 9000S happened. Someone even took a photo of Raimondo's speech with a mobile phone equipped with a Kirin 9000S chip. This is a way for China to show itself: if you want to block the chips, we will produce the chips ourselves. No matter how difficult the chip is, we can develop it. In addition, the United States is currently facing considerable difficulties. We know that the United States is extremely dependent on a large number of semiconductor chips imported from Taiwan, China, in the manufacturing of high-tech products. Although the U.S. chip industry looks very strong on the surface, in fact it is mainly due to the contribution of TSMC. From a legal perspective, since the United States recognizes the One China principle, when certain extreme situations occur, China may take countermeasures and even impose sanctions on high-end American chips. So, to a certain extent, Raimondo's assertion in the interview that the U.S. is overly dependent on Taiwan, China, is unsustainable and dangerous. Of course, the United States now faces a dilemma. If the semiconductor blockade against China continues to be strengthened, it will encourage China to redouble its efforts and promote domestic industry chain manufacturers to place orders for domestic chips to prevent sanctions and blockades. This will spur China to accelerate the development of domestic alternatives to U.S. technology, such as Huawei's Kirin chips. And if the semiconductor sanctions against China are relaxed, China, which has experienced difficulties in the past, will have easier access to advanced technology and accelerate the localization process. Therefore, the current headache is not for China, but for the United States to face difficulties in making decisions. Dear friends, this video ends here. What do you think of China's approach? How do you think the United States should respond? Welcome to leave a message in the comment area to share your thoughts and feelings. If you like the content of this issue, please recommend it to your friends so that more people can see this video. Thank you everyone for watching and supporting. See you next time.